We are talking with Anne Applebaum, the journalist and famous historian. Anne is here for a debate at Expert Forum event, launching her books also. Let's start our discussion, Anne, with the major theme, the clash between the US and Europe. And we had President Nicolae recently attended Donald Trump's Council of Peace in Washington, standing alongside Viktor Orban as the only EU leaders being present at that event. And these look like a pivot away from Brussels. The question is Romania forced to choose between Washington and the EU? Or is this double game, playing to the both ends, a sustainable strategy?
So first of all, let me say I understand why the Romanian president wants a good relationship with Donald Trump. That makes sense. He's the leader of the Romania's largest ally, and I don't if he makes a judgment that it's important to him to appear at an event, then I don't object to it. However, let me also step back and think a little bit more broadly about the U.S. and Europe, because it is true that for the first time since 1945, the U.S. and Europe are heading in different directions. The United States formally no longer sees itself as the leader of a democratic camp. The administration doesn't talk about it that way. Its national security strategy doesn't see the world that way. They have no special interest in defending Europe or in working with Europe. They've described their foreign policy as transactional. They'll work with whoever suits them at any given moment. Given that that is the case, it's really important that Romanians remember how important their economic stability depends on European integration, that the money Brussels provides in different forms and structural funds and so on is far larger than anything the United States provides. And that ultimately, even in the area of security, it's other European countries who feel the same kinds of threats as Romania who will be Romania's most important long-term friends. And here I'm thinking of Poland, I'm thinking of the Baltic states, I'm also thinking of Scandinavia, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and the UK. These are the countries that are most focused on the threat from Russia, who feel it personally, who understand it, and it's really important that Romania work closely with them in the area of security going forward.
On the other hand, Anne Applebaum, there is a reality, the geography is showing this reality. Romania is not in the position like France or Germany or Great Britain, far away from Russia. The truth is,
Germany is not that far, but yes.
Okay, but Romania is here very close to Russia, and we need support in military terms of the US. And in the same time, we need to be close to Brussels because the money are coming from Brussels. What should Romania do in this very delicate position?
So, I mean, of course, Romania should seek good relations with the U.S. and at the same time, good relations with Europe. And there's at the moment, you're not being forced to choose. So I don't think you have to do that yet. But again, I would draw your attention to the fact that for the U.S. administration, a war with Iran, which is a war of choice that the U.S. decided to launch, appears to be more important for Washington than Ukraine's war with Russia. And you need to draw some conclusions from that. As President Zelensky said, something like 800 Patriot air defense missiles, these are the missiles that Ukraine needs to defend its cities from Russian attack, were used in the Middle East in 3 days at the beginning of this war. And that's more than Ukraine has had since 2022. So the U.S. is demonstrating that it's making a choice. It's choosing to fight a war in the Middle East, and it's not choosing to defend Ukraine. And that should worry Romanians because it is in your interest that Ukraine wins this war, and that's really your primary geopolitical interest right now.
By the way, President Zelensky is arriving in Bucharest tomorrow to meet President Nicolae. Do you think Zelensky is worried that Romanian and American support is fading away? Is he here to prevent a scenario where Putin gains the upper hand because the West is looking elsewhere in Iran?
So, of course, I don't know why President Zelensky is coming. I don't have his, his calendar in front of me. But yes, I mean, I'm sure that for President Zelensky, it's very important that his main allies, the countries on whom he's depended to continue the war effort, may, remain. Not just that they remain in his camp, but they remember what is in their interests. It is in Romania's interest for Ukraine to win the war. It is not in Romania's interest for Russia to defeat Ukraine and become more dominant in the region. And so, if he's coming to remind Romania what is the most important war in the world for Romania, then I think that he's doing the right thing.
Do you think that Donald Trump would be tempted to strike a deal with Vladimir Putin, essentially ending the war on Russia's terms, in exchange for Moscow distancing itself from Iran and China?
So I think that President Trump has been trying to do that for a year. Actually, that is what he wants to do. The trouble is, first of all, that the Russians don't want to end the war in any way except through the conquest of Ukraine. The Russians have not abandoned their original goal, and their original goal is the destruction of Ukraine as a nation. And they've never formally abandoned it. President Putin has never said he wants a ceasefire. They've never acceded to any kind of any halfway measure that would allow Ukraine to exist as a state and for Ukraine to have the assurance that the war won't begin again 2 months later after a ceasefire or 3 months later. Secondly, President Trump doesn't have the power to end the war on anybody's terms because Ukraine has agency and Ukraine can decide what to do. And Europe has agency. Europeans can also decide what to do. And right now, the war is funded by Europe, not by America. America plays a very, very limited role now in the conflict. And the most important weaponry in the war does not come from the United States. It's made by Ukrainians. I mean, I think many people don't understand that Ukraine has, in the last 4 years, undergone a kind of revolution in military technology. The Ukrainians are now the world leaders in drone technology. They're actually providing it right now to some of the Gulf states to help them defend against Iran. And most of the money for that production, again, comes from Europe, not from the United States. So, President Trump doesn't have the ability to just end the war on Russia's terms. That's not within his power.
Even if he tried to?
He has been trying to for months, actually. He can't end it on Russia's terms because there are other people who are interested. Europe has a role and Ukraine, of course, has the main role.
Okay, talking about the Iran war this time, the breaking news in Romania today is the U.S. request to deploy new military capabilities at the Mikhail Kogalniceanu base in the south of the country, likely aircraft and radar system. As we speak now, the Supreme Defense Council is debating this request. And given the regional tension, what is your take? Should Romania greenlight this request? And what are the risks of helping the U.S. operations in the Middle East?
So I think if Romania decides to help the U.S. with its Middle East operation, it should ensure that it gets something in return. Because, again, the greatest strategic challenge for Romania right now comes from Russia. It does not come from Iran. And the Romanians should make sure that in exchange for helping the U.S. in the war that Donald Trump has chosen to start, then they should receive help in the war that concerns them, the ongoing war that's been going on for 4 years, that affects the Romanian economy, that affects Romanian security, and so on. So if they're going to help the U.S., they need to get something in return.
The former president of Romania, Traian Băsescu, just posted on Facebook something very similar, saying that the U.S. should know that the access to Kogalniceanu base have a cost.
I think that's right. The Romania is, if the U.S. now has a transactional foreign policy where it feels distance from former allies and it doesn't feel particularly close to Europe anymore, then Europe also has the right to respond in a more transactional way than in the past.
So let's be transactional with the Trump administration.
Well, I mean, I don't like the word transactional, and I don't like the attitude because, I think what better serves Romania is to be part of a values-based alliance. And right now, the main values-based alliance is in Europe. And I hope that eventually the U.S. returns to that alliance.
Let's put this request of the U.S. administration in bigger context, in European context. We had major European powers like France and Germany have been very hesitant to get directly involved in the conflict with Iran. Last year also, the Trump administration has previously announced troop withdrawals, even removed Romania from visa waiver program. In this context, why should Bucharest remain such a loyal ally to Washington when the relationship seems to be one-sided?
I see no reason why Romania can't ask things of the U.S. in return for help. You can ask for the visa waiver program back. You can ask for help in the conflict with Ukraine. I don't see any reason why Romania can't do that.
Okay, let's end our interview with a discussion with another issue regarding the conflict between U.S. and Europe. We saw Trump administration openly giving support for so-called patriotic parties across Europe. In Romania, the far-right party Our is leaning heavily into the MAGA movement. Do you believe the Trump administration is actively helping Our to reach power, as we have seen with similar trends in Hungary or Germany?
So to be clear, there are different parts of the Trump administration. There's, and there is a piece of the administration which is closely connected to the most radical part of the MAGA movement, which is not really a conservative movement; it's a revolutionary movement. I mean, it opposes liberal democracy, and it thinks of and it seeks to support other kinds of political parties that, like them, also criticize liberal democracy and imagine some kind of authoritarian system. I would hope that Romanians would understand, who have recent experience of dictatorship in their own country, and some people remember it, and there are certainly older people remember it very well, would have the sense to understand the need to resist this kind of language. It's appealing to radicals, it's appealing to people who are discontented with politics for different reasons, but it doesn't provide any solutions. So yes, there is a part of the administration that will be doing this and is doing this now. However, I would also say that at the end of the day, the American state will deal with whoever is in power in Romania. And if liberals are in power, or the left is in power, or the current president is in power, then that's who their most important partner will always be. And so I wouldn't be distracted by this language about MAGA, and who their relations are with here. It's much less important than who your government is. And so as long as Romanians choose a government that's good for them and good for Romania, and will keep Romania, solidly democratic and inside Europe, then I don't think this MAGA effort is very important.
But what would be the final goal of Trump administration, of the radical part of MAGA, to support extremist movements across Europe? What they want to gain in the end?
Oh, it's very clear. Their goal is to destroy the European Union. So for them, the European Union is both a kind of ideological enemy because it supports democracy, but also because an important backer of this movement comes from the American tech industry. They also oppose the European Union because it's the only organization in the world, probably, that can regulate American technology companies.
And fine also.
And fine them. And so they would like to get rid of the European Union. And this is in the interests of a few big companies in Silicon Valley. This is not really in American interests. For the American public, the European Union is an important partner. It's definitely not in European interests. This would destroy, without the EU, it would break up Europe's economy. It would weaken Europe. It would make Europe a kind of, American-Russian colony without its own voice in the world. And I think Europeans, including Romanians, need to understand how dangerous this idea is and to stand up to it. And be very wary of this facile anti-European language that you hear. It's very easy to say we don't like the EU, we don't like foreigners, and so on. And then take a step back and remember what the EU brings to Romania, what these deeper security and economic links, to Germany, to France, to Spain, to Italy, to Poland, to Sweden. What do these things bring to Romania? This is where your security and your national interests lie, and make sure that your political class continues to support it. And as I said, the U.S. administration will, when it needs something from Romania, it will deal with the Romanian prime minister and the Romanian president, not the Romanian opposition.
Thank you very much, Anne Applebaum, for being with us at G4 Media.
Thank you.